Om Vajra Sattva Vajra Sattva Tenopa Tishtra Dridro Me Bhava Soto Kayo Me Bhava Supo Kayo Me Bhava Anurakto Me Bhava Sarva Siddhi Me Prayatsam Sarva Karma Sutsamen Tsitam Shriyam Kuruhum Ha 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 ho Bhaga Sarva Tathagata Vajra Mame Munsa Vajra Bhava Maha Samaya Sattva Ahum Pe Eho Shude Shude Soha Yam Ho Shude Shude Soha Ramo Shude Shude Soha Lam Ho Shude Shude Soha Bam Ho Shude Shude Soha Eyam Ram Lam Bam Shude Soha Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Shakya Muni So Om Ye Dharma Hetun Prabhava Hetun Teshan Tathagato Yawa Data Teshan Chayo Niroda Evam Vadi Mahashrama Naye Svoha On Chönam Tamche Gyule Jung Te Gyu Deshin Shekpe Sung Gyula Gokpa Kayimba Gechon Chembu Dekesun Gechon Chembu Jingilo Gechon Chembu Ngodrupzol Gechon Chembu Trashisho Sangye Chedan Soge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsu Chi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonamgi Drola Pinchre Sangye Druparesho Sangye Chedan Soge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsu Chi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonamgi Drola Pinchre Sangye Druparesho Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonamla Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsuchi Dagi Cheshe Gibe Sonamgi Drola Pinchre Sangye Druparesho. In the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, May I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Good morning. Buongiorno. Before we start with the actual teachings, I would like just to share one thing with you, because it's fresh now. Otherwise, time passes and after we forget about it. At least I would forget about to share. And yesterday night, I was reading the text of Lama Tsongkhapa and Panchen Losang Gyaltsen in Tibetan, and it was already quite late actually, and I was quite tired in a way, but it's so beautiful. So I went on and on and on and on through the text, and so nice. And then there is a whole part after which is, I didn't get to that part, but it's almost the part where it started talking about how to meditate, and I was reading through that part. There's the part talking about correct view of reality, but I was not reading specifically that part. Then this night I had a dream, the dream was very nice, and more than what I saw was the sensation. And the dream basically was me observing my body, observing myself, so there were no many other images around, just me looking at myself. And then I was analyzing and looking at how do I exist and how I am free. I lack inherent existence. So I was observing my sensations, also observing the thoughts, observing the different parts of the body. I don't remember the precise process, but everything was so clear that we ourselves, we lack this solid existence. And basically, the most nice thing was not only a clear understanding, but was this sensation of being free from this weight that we carry, of grasping at inherent existence of the self, of seeing ourselves as existing objectively and so on. And it was the sensation of freedom. It was like so nice. So I woke up this morning with a lot of joy. It was something very, very nice. So just to share with this, so I believe there is some connection with the blessings that come from this text. So I hope that Lama Tsongkhapa and Panchen Losang Gyaltsen can guide us on the process really to realize the lack of inherent existence of the self. And so it was something for me very auspicious, because the main objective of the text, as it was saying yesterday, when you have a wrong understanding of emptiness, it can be even danger, because we go into nihilism. And so I think this dream is auspicious, as we are in the moment that we have started reading this text together and commenting through it. So I think it's something very auspicious. So for all of us to be able really to realize the correct view of reality of ourselves and of our phenomena. Okay? Namo Guru Manju Goka ya Sangye Kunge Yeshe Ni Murmi Karge Rebala Losang Rige Kebda Che Nyemparatape Palter Du Gwende Tsewe Samune Tiwe Sulgi Dombethe Jidra Sebe Namchogi Kube Talmo Jarte Sul Gyawe Chubon Gedidang Shidong Sumbe Gongdeni Sangye Niba Lutruki Tambor Ngwembar Töbe Chu Chine Ngebar Lekjungwa Kangchir Ngwemba Töt Kangchir Ngwembar Tötope Rimgi Ngebar Lekbaum Shebe Tundo Dagi Kum. Okay. So we will go now to the second question. Okay. So yesterday, as I was reading the text, I was looking and I was thinking how to teach it, because if we go into too many details, it's going to take really long time, because there are many, many parts where we can go deep into it, and it will take months and months and months just to explain the first part of the text. And so we will go into details, but not too many details, okay, in order for us to try to find a middle way. Not to go too deep, not to be too shallow, to be in the middle of the way. So I'm going to try to do it that way, okay? So even regarding the first question, there are still many things that we could say. But we will move on because the next question is going in the same direction. Okay? So we go to the second question. Tena, shin sowa kebe, dek shindu mikpa shen ma chiki ne, tamsa chik ne gomna, chin yoba te kan, mitakpa gomba tabuam, kuncho la solwa deba tabuam, dikpa shaban, jancho ki sem gombam, jindro ke loba tabu yin serwa on site, tenam ki kyang, kie shindu chewar on. Therefore, what is there where there is more impact when it is meditated on from another approach of a strict meditation, like the technique of an expert carpenter, lifting his tool with more effect? Which means from all the different techniques of meditation, which is the one that is the most effective one? Which is the one that we need to use like as the special tool that we have? Like a carpenter, he can have many tools to do his job. But there is one tool that's his like most important tool, without which he cannot do any of his jobs. So what's the tool that the meditator have that's the most important one, that through that tool he can really make his practice much stronger? Okay? And Lama Tsongkhapa gave his own answer, and then after Panchen, Losang, Gyaltsen. It is possible that there are some who proclaim, some people may say, oh, to practice such a making, a prayer request to the three jewels, or to make the confession of negativities, or to meditate on the mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta, or to train him or herself in the six perfections. So some people may say, oh, the main tool, the main technique that we need in meditation that really makes our practice much stronger, it can be making prayer requests, still, there is something more. There is another part which really, as Lama Tsongkhapa says, yet it appears that there is a superior means, another tool much more powerful to generate an uncontrived awareness seeking liberation, to generate the mind that looks for liberation, to generate this strong intention to be free from suffering, to generate the strong intention to reach enlightenment, to be free from samsara. There is still, more clear is not reaching enlightenment, is being free from samsara. But there is still another tool which is much more powerful than that, where one knows that the victors, that the Buddhas has taught to emphasize those respective cycles of visualization which enhance one's experience of the relevant subject. Therefore, I ask this question. So the question that I put is, what is really, here Lama Tsongkhapa is not really giving the answer. He's asking, what is really that we can meditate on that will make our renunciation, that will make our wish to be free from suffering even much stronger? What is that? Because as we saw from the first question, the first step that we need is we need to wish to reach enlightenment. We need to wish to be free from samsara. Otherwise, we will perfections, we will having a better life here now. Not with the true intention to get free from samsara. Okay? Oh, I think because if I am a bodhisattva, that will be very cool and nice. If I pray all the perfections will help me to generate merits, it's good to do that. But if we do not have the deep intention to be free from samsara, everything that we'll do will not be a direct cause to liberation. That must be a deep motivation. So that's why Lama Tsongkhapa put this question. He says, okay, all of these other practices, they are very important. But what is the meditation that we can do? What is the meditation that we should do that really enhances, that gives the strength for the wish to be free from samsara? Okay, what is this meditation? And luckily we have Panchen also Chokyi Gyaltsen giving us the answer, okay? So, here Lama Tsongkhapa puts emphasis in renunciation, which is the wish to reach liberation, the wish, this deep and strong intention to reach a state of peace, of harmony. free from any form of suffering. And this is the main intention that we need to generate at the beginning. It's like if we can have the most beautiful car, if we do not have any gas, the car will get stuck, will not be able to move. So we can have all the knowledge about the Dharma, we can have many wonderful techniques of meditation and so on, but if we do not have the intention to reach liberation, we will get stuck. So this is the first point which Lama Tsongkhapa is putting emphasis in the very beginning of the path. First thing we need to develop this wish. It's like falling in love with liberation. It's like having this deep, strong wish to reach liberation. So what's the special tool that we have in order to develop such mind that will not come spontaneously? And here, Panchen, Losang, Chokyi, Gyaltsen give us the answer. Okay, and he says, Shinso kebe, trul dekde, tardo shukra kebe tab, Gyaltsab tambe sumba shing, tamche kemba rangni gyang, dukde nyemik masamna, tardo chi shing mikye sum, korwe nyegya sembe tsul, mangyang dungal ki, jigne tardo chuk lang ye, sakchet sorwa dewale, yechung chirwe palang chi, tena duche rangshingi, sakche nyerlen pungbodi, dunga drupdan drubenu, nedan dredan sungutar, migne gomna chingye la. As we go on, the answers become a little bit more, not difficult, but with more details of need of explanation. It says, the technique to generate an intense wish for liberation, like the technique of an expert carpenter who lifts up a mechanical tool, is as taught by the Sublime Master, the Omniscient himself said. So he refers to the teaching of Gyaltsen Rinpoche, but also referring to the teachings of Lama Tsongkhapa himself. And it says, the words said here are words of Gyaltsen Rinpoche. Gyaltsen Rinpoche is the disciple that when we look to Lama Tsongkhapa is in the left side, the little bit older one, okay? And his words are, if you do not think on the shortcomings of true suffering, the genuine wish for liberation will not be generated. If you do not reflect upon the faults, the shortcomings of suffering, true suffering means suffering in all the three forms of suffering. And true suffering here actually, it's also, because the text says, Dukten nyemi masana tardo chishi mikye sum. Dukten, what is here translated as true suffering, actually means the truth of suffering. When we have the Four Noble Truths, we have the truth of suffering, the truth of the cause of suffering, the truth of cessation, and the truth of the path. Here it's called the Dukten Nyemik. It's called the truth of suffering. Maybe instead of true suffering, we could say the truth of suffering. True suffering is also, the meaning is somehow, because it means not only superficial suffering, it's understanding suffering in all its three levels, which is the suffering of suffering, the suffering of change, dungal gidungal, gyurwe dungal, kyabaduche gidungal, and the suffering, all-pervasive suffering. And then Panchen Losang Gyaltsen continues. There are many ways of thinking about the shortcomings of samsara. However, the wish for freedom due to the fear of suffering also exists in the mental continuum of cattle, which means also exists in the cattle. Also, a cow doesn't want to suffer. Okay? So, the fact that we recognize that we don't want suffering, but the suffering of suffering, which is the gross level of suffering, all the sensations that we call suffering, even a cow has the awareness that this suffering is not good and wants to abandon it. Renouncing the happiness of contaminated feeling, which is the suffering of change, can arise also in the mental continuum of a non-Buddhist. there are many different other non-Buddhist schools of philosophy and so on, that they also recognize that mundane pleasures are actually an illusion of happiness. Okay? We'll go into more details about this. Hence, only if one observed the perpetuating aggregates, which means the all-pervasive suffering, the pervasive suffering of compositional factors, which are naturally contaminated and meditated upon them as a provider of suffering, and a receptacle of suffering like sickness, tumor, and pain, and one could save oneself from being drowned in suffering. So, the point here is that in order for us to develop true wish for liberation, we need to understand we want to liberate ourselves from what? Okay. Normally, most of us, okay, when we think about suffering, what examples would we give? Physical pain? Heat, cold, thirst, hunger? Mental suffering? Oh, I am sad, I am upset, I am unsatisfied, I get angry, or all of this. This would be mostly, right? You know, if anybody would come to us and say, look, from today on, you are free from your physical suffering and from your mental suffering, would we be satisfied with that? Would that be enough for us? Sincerely speaking, for most of us, yes. Okay? But this type of suffering, even a cow knows that this is suffering. Okay? So there's other levels of suffering that we need to understand. So, the second level of suffering is what here is called renouncing the happiness of contaminated feeling, which is called the suffering of change, which are all the pleasures that we may have of body and mind, which actually brings us a sensation of pleasure, but sooner or later transform into suffering. It's like the drinking of the water. I like so much water, I drink my water, it brings me a lot of pleasure. So nice. But if I continue to drink water, can it sustain the sensation of happiness, of pleasure? We know very well that not. After the second glass, after the second liter, slowly it becomes a cause for suffering. So, the second type of suffering is understanding that even the pleasures, material things that we may gain, the recognition of our image actually is of the nature of suffering. So we cannot project our happiness into that. But this is something that many other philosophical schools also do have the understanding. So what's the special thing, what's the special tool that Buddha gave us? Is to understand and reflect upon the third type of suffering, which is the all-pervasive suffering, okay? Which we'll go now through it. Okay. So, what Panchen, Losang, Chokyi, Gyaltsen is telling us is that there are many tools that we can have to reflect upon suffering. But the most powerful tool is to reflect upon the all-pervasive suffering, because the suffering of suffering, we all know it, you know, and we all try to avoid it as much as we can, because we avoid it by avoiding suffering of the body. So we try to get nice food and nice drinks, and we try to avoid temperatures too cold or too hot. We try to avoid to become too tired or to have pain, and so on. So constantly we avoid physical suffering. We try to get far away from the situations that make us unhappy. You know, so we constantly are trying to avoid the suffering of suffering. This is already natural in us. Something that can happen, especially to people that start in Buddhism, is that we, which is Tsongkhapa describes here, as Michel also Gyaltsen describes here, as he calls, there are many ways of thinking about the shortcomings of samsara. Oh, here, verse 5b. Renouncing the happiness of contaminated feelings. What we mean by that, contaminated feelings, is the sensation of pleasure. It's like the pleasure of the senses, the pleasure that we get by gaining material things, the sensation of pleasure that we get by when we get recognition. All of this brings pleasure, but cannot sustain our pleasure. So what happened to that is that we can get to a point where we actually understand and we say, oh, the pleasures of the body and the pleasures of material things and the recognition of my image, they are truly empty. They cannot really bring me true satisfaction. So there is a moment where we do not look anymore for pleasure in these things, and then we try to avoid the suffering yet, but we may find ourselves a little bit stuck in the middle of this, because we do not have yet the vision of liberation. We don't see more satisfaction in the mundane things, and at the same time, we don't know much where to go. This can happen. What is missing here is for us to reflect deeply upon the all-pervasive suffering, which is the main tool, which Lama Tsongkhapa asked, which is the tool that we need to meditate upon that will liberate, that will help us to generate a strong intention to be liberated from samsara. That is to meditate upon the shortcomings of the all-pervasive suffering. Okay? So, I believe very much that this is one point that very often we do not meditate on it. Very often we do not even reflect much about, even when we talk about the First Noble Truth, for many people we just go through it, and the suffering of all pervasive suffering, we don't go much deep into it. That's why Lama Tsongkhapa put the question. No? Therefore I asked this question. Because not so many people remember about this, and this is something very, very important. And we can see this in our own lives. When we look upon suffering and we do not get into the third level of suffering, we may remain in a sort of a neutral state, looking for a sort of a neutral state. We do not find pleasure, satisfaction in the pleasures anymore. And at the same time, we want to avoid suffering and we don't know much where to go. This can happen. So really to go beyond, to go for liberation, we must understand deeply the suffering, the all-pervasive suffering. Okay? So let's try to understand a little bit what it means. So Panchen Rinpoche says, Tena duche ranshinki sakche nirlen pumbodi dunga drupdang drubene nedang dredang sungutar mikne gomna chingye lak. Hence, only if one observed the perpetuating aggregates, the pervasive suffering of compositional factors which are naturally contaminated, and meditating upon them as a provider of suffering, and the receptacle of suffering like sickness, tumor, and pain, one could save oneself from being drowned in suffering. So, only if observed the perpetuating aggregates, tena duche ranshin ge sakche nirling pungbodi. Sakche nirling pungbo. Composition of factors which are naturally contaminated. Composition of factors which are naturally contaminated is the definition of this body. Okay? Sakche nirling pungbo. Okay, I will give a little different translation of sakche nirling pungbo. Sak means impure. Che means that has. That is impure. Sakche. Nierlen means result. Pungbo means a heap, like a small mountain. Okay? So the body is, the definition of this body is the place where the results of our negative karmas manifests. That's the definition of this body. Sakche Nyerlengi Pungbo, which means the heap, where is the place where the results of the impurities manifest, accumulate. Impurities means what? Ignorance, hatred, aversion, attachment, all the mental defilements and the negative actions done by it. That's the impurities. So, where do we experience the results of our negative actions? Through our 5 aggregates, to our impure 5 aggregates. And it's through our mind and our body. 5 aggregates means our mind and body. So where do we experience the result of the negative actions we have done in the past? Through the mind and through the body. So the mind and the body impured. The impure mind and body, which means the mind and body which is polluted by mental defilements and by karma, is the place where all the negative actions will manifest their results. Even in the monastery, sometimes we joke, oh, you got sick. Sure, this body is nothing more, nothing less than the heap of the results of your negative actions. No? So, it's where everything accumulates. So, in this, the all-pervasive suffering means that if we look for the definition, for an example of the all-pervasive suffering, is our 5 contaminated aggregates. Our 5 aggregates being contaminated, being polluted. By what? By mental defilements and by negative karma. So, in other words, means our body and our mind polluted. Which means it doesn't matter where I go, I cannot escape from suffering in the moment that myself, body and mind, are polluted. There is no way to escape. It doesn't matter how far I run. It doesn't matter what a beautiful life I find. It doesn't matter, I can change family, I can change job, I can change body, I can change country, I can change anything I want. As long as I have selfishness, hatred, aversion, insatisfaction, attachment, jealousy, miserliness, arrogance, pride, and finally ignorance, I will suffer. There is no way around that. There is no way how to mental defilements. I will create conditions fast, and so I will suffer. And I will also create new negative causes. So I am constantly in this cycle. And the experience that I have of existence is going to be constantly polluted by it. So there is no other way out than eliminating our own ignorance and defilements. So, in the moment we really deeply reflect upon the all-pervasive suffering, it will help us to understand the true meaning of samsara. That samsara is not a place that we can escape from. It's not a situation that we are living in. Samsara is the inner cycle of mental defilements, action, and suffering. And it doesn't matter, I can be in a situation where momentarily I have no any more gross suffering. The suffering of suffering is completely stopped. Just wait for the conditions to arise and suffering will come back again. Why? Because we have the seeds in our mental continuum. The causes are there of the actions we did in the past. Our karma is there. So as soon as I will create the conditions, suffering will arise again. It's like if we are reborn in the God realm. There are many parts of the God realms where there is no suffering of suffering. Only pleasure. We say, oh, finally I've got what I wanted. Then what happened? One day, conditions change. And we get out of the God realm. and the conditions will arise again, and what will happen? All the seeds of suffering that we have planted, not all, but many of them, they would get moistured, sun, earth, and then suffering will ripen once again. So, it's like if we plant in our continuum, we have many seeds for suffering. It's just a matter of pouring water or not pouring water. They are there. So the only way really to get out is to eliminate our own ignorance. And the text will continue to talk about that. But really to develop this strong intention to liberation, we must reflect upon the all-pervasive suffering. Otherwise, we may think, okay, if my health is good, my body is fine, I look beautiful, people like me, I have a good material situation, I am in a nice situation with everybody around me, I do my practices so I make my life feel meaningful, I have this, I have my guru that is wonderful, I am happy in life. Wonderful. But that's not a final goal. That's good, but that's not the final goal. Why? Because we are not suffering now simply because we are able to manage the conditions around us, not to suffer. As soon as the conditions change, the seeds for suffering are there. They will just arise once again. So the only way out is to eliminate the pollution, the impurity that is within ourselves, our body and our mind, which is mental defilements and negative karma. But we are not able to eliminate completely all negative karma. That's too much. Too much negative karma accumulated since beginningless time. So the only thing we can do is eliminate our own ignorance and our own defilements. And if the defilements are not there anymore, as a result, there will be no more suffering. So, the point here is that suffering, yes, we want to avoid it. The suffering of change, we understand that it's not going to bring us true happiness. But the only way to bring us happiness, the only way to reach a state of peace, of joy, of satisfaction, is eliminating our selfishness, ultimately our ignorance, and momentarily our anger, jealousy, pride, miserliness, and so on. That's the only way. There's no other way out. So by reflecting upon this deeply, we generate the intention, I must be free from samsara, but samsara is not a place, it's not a condition externally, it's an inner state. It's to be trapped, binded, be completely trapped by our own ignorance, selfishness, miserliness, pride, and so on, attachment, and the actions that we do through that. That's the all-pervasive suffering. So as the text says here, hence, only if observed the perpetuating aggregates, the pervasive suffering of compositional factors, which means the pervasive suffering of our body and mind. Compositional factors here means our body and mind, which are naturally contaminated, and meditate upon them as the provider of suffering. We need to understand that what is generating suffering for us is not the situation that we are living, it's not the place that we are, it's not the government, it's not people that we don't like, it's not what people say, it's not a temperature. What is generating suffering is our own body and mind being polluted by defilements and by karma. And also our aggregates are a receptacle of suffering, such sicknesses, tumors, pain. We could only save ourselves from drowning into suffering once we deeply understand that the cause of our own suffering are not the external conditions, but is our own ignorance and our own karma, our defilements. That's the only way how we can actually get out, only by understanding that. But it's not conceptually understanding. We must deeply meditate on it, and by meditating on it, it would generate a strong intention to be free from it. And by that we generate renunciation. We renounce the true causes of suffering. Okay? So, I think the second question is quite clear, no? The answer of it. Okay? So we can go to the third question. Mengate, Tuki, Gongna, Taona, Korwa Dile, Rangre Nam, Tarwar Chebe, Tap Tamba, Charwa, Gyalwe Sumbe, Chikchuk, Chantup Nguesheba Te Kanying Trivu. Dacha Sibe Tarpe Tap, Tamba Chargi Nesuna, Gyalwe Simba Chikchuki, Chantu Lakbe Lapsum La. Short question and short answer. It goes, the question is, if we think of that advice, then what is that you said? He could have given one single teaching on a sublime and strict method which frees us from samsara. So, if we think on that advice, then what is that you said? He could have given one single teaching on a sublime and strict method which frees us from this samsara. So, Panchen Rinpoche answers, if the sublime method to free ourselves from cyclic existence were closely identified, one teaching from the victor would be enough. The 3 higher trainings could be within our reach. So, which is the essence of all the teachings of Buddha in order to be free from samsara? What do we need? If we need to go and we look, okay, I need one teaching from Buddha in order to be free from samsara, which teaching would we choose? Panchen Rinpoche says, we need to choose the 3 higher trainings. The 3 higher trainings means to train ourselves in morality, in concentration, and in wisdom. This is the 3 higher trainings. So, what do we need to get free from samsara? If we look of all the teachings, what do we actually need? We need morality, we need concentration, and we need wisdom. That's what we need. And all Buddha's teachings are condensed in these 3. All Buddha's teachings are condensed in morality, concentration, and wisdom. This is also the symbol of the Dharma wheel. Okay? It's also represented in the Dharma wheel. When we have a Dharma wheel, it has in the center the nucleus, which represents wisdom. The rays, the spokes, which represents concentration. And then there is the frame of the wheel that keeps together, which represents morality. So these are the 3 higher trainings, and like the essence of Buddha's teachings also. So when we go through it and we say, okay, if from all Buddha's teachings I need to choose one single teaching that is the sublime teaching that will take me out of samsara, what do I go to look for? For the 3 higher trainings: morality, concentration, and wisdom. Okay? Okay? So even if we look here now in the temple, now that we are without this ceiling, we can see we have in the center the wisdom, which is the nucleus. Then we have the rays, which is the concentration. And around we have the walls that are keeping all together, which represents morality. So these are the 3 higher trainings, which is the essence of Buddha's teachings. So let's talk a little bit about this. First of all, let's start with morality. Morality in Tibetan is called Semsung. Semsung means mind protection. It is the ability to protect our mind from our mind, which is the ability to. Basically, there are 3 types of moralities that we need to follow. It's the morality to avoid negative actions, the morality to accomplish positive actions, and the morality to benefit others. These are the 3 types of moralities that we need to practice. Okay? So the first thing is recognize what is harmful for ourselves and others. What are the behaviors of body, speech, and mind that are harmful for myself and others? What's the way that I can use my speech, my mind, my body that is harmful for myself and others? Once I recognize them, morality is our ability to avoid such actions. That's what is morality. Another thing is ethics. Ethics is where we are going to discuss what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is bad. Morality is our ability to avoid what is negative and to accomplish what is positive and to benefit others. Okay, is it clear the difference? One thing is ethics, where we will discuss if what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is bad. But I can have perfect ethics and understand very well what is right and wrong, but still I'm not able to avoid what is wrong and I'm not able to accomplish what is good. This means I lack morality. Without morality, we are not able to follow a path. We are completely like a leaf in the wind. Whatever directions takes us, the conditions takes us, we go. Morality is our ability to stick to our path and to say, I would do this, I would not do that, and to follow it. It's essential in our path. So we have different levels of morality. First level is we start by understanding that how to use our speech in a positive way, how to use our body in a positive way, how to use our mind in a positive way, in gossiping, avoid criticism, avoid lying, avoid using harsh words, avoid violence with both mind, speech and body, with all of them. So to avoid such type of violence is the first type of morality. To avoid violence with body, speech and mind is the first morality, which means to avoid negative actions, to avoid everything that is harmful for ourselves and others. And this is also a way of loving ourselves. Is to develop love towards ourselves, which means to recognize what is harmful and to abandon it, to recognize what is beneficial and to accomplish it, to cultivate it. Okay? So this is the first part of these teachings and this training. It's called a training because it does not come out spontaneously. We need to train ourselves in it. We need to say, this is harmful for me, so I will not do it. Would it be easy to avoid it? No. But I will put my energy in it so I avoid what is harmful to me. Oh, that other thing is to sit down and meditate every day. It's very beneficial. Is it easy? No. But I would put energy to do it. To help others, is it always spontaneous? No, but I will do it. So I have the commitment with myself to avoid what is harmful, to accomplish what is positive, and to benefit others. That's morality. In very few words. Okay? So, morality is something that we need to develop gradually as we move along our path, as we have more and more clear to ourselves what is a benefit for us and what is harmful to us. As we move along the path, we develop more and more our own morality, and it shouldn't be seen as something heavy. It's actually quite nice. It's not necessarily easy, but it's light, it's nice to be able to avoid what generates suffering and to accomplish what brings us happiness. We should do that with joy, even though it's not so easy. Okay? It's not a sacrifice. We are not doing any sacrifice. We are doing what is good for ourselves and others. Okay? So the other two trainings, we are not going to go into details right now on that. But we need to train ourselves on concentration, which is the ability to have control over our mind, where we say, mind stays here, and there the mind remains. It's a very, very important quality to develop. And wisdom, that's the key for all. Once we do, the text will talk later a lot about wisdom and also about concentration. But wisdom is what cuts from the root our suffering, which is eliminating our own ignorance. Is the only true key to eliminate our suffering is wisdom. So through morality, we put ourselves on the path. Through concentration, we direct our energy clearly. Through wisdom, we go in the right direction and we eliminate our suffering. Okay? Without morality, we cannot keep the path of concentration. Why? Because to develop concentration, we must be free from the extremes of attraction and aversion. And in order to have that, we must have good morality. And And without concentration, we are not able to direct our mind through wisdom. Even wisdom without concentration doesn't have much power. So all these three, they go together. They are one holding the other. It's like the will. The morality keeps everything together. The concentration directs the energy, and the wisdom gives the direction. The direction is what? To eliminate ignorance, which is the main cause, the root of our own suffering. Okay? So, basically, it's only through the three higher trainings, and it's called training. It's something that we need slowly to develop more and more and more and more by repeating it. That's why it's called a training. The training of morality, the training of concentration, the training of wisdom. It's only through these three higher trainings that it's possible to get out of samsara. No other way. Sorry to say, but there is no initiation where the guru can come with a dorje on your head and then you get free from samsara. That will not happen. Not even free from your suffering of mind. It's only through hard work. It's only through the training, which means familiarizing ourselves, training ourselves in morality, in concentration, in wisdom, that we can get truly free from samsara. And it is actually something really, really possible. Okay? So this is the essence through which all Buddha's teachings get condensed into these three trainings. Sutra, Tantra, everything is within it. Some people might think, oh, but I like Tantra, and then you feel that Tantra you are more free. No need morality. That's exactly the opposite. In Tantra, if we look everywhere, whenever we receive an initiation, what it says, keep purely your commitments. Keeping our commitment pure is the root of all realizations. That's what is said in all the texts of Tantra. So without morality, Tantra, nothing. That's the basis. Keeping purely our commitments. That's so important. Okay? Qualcuno potrebbe pensare, ah no, ma io sono un praticante del Tantra, Vajrayana, qua siamo tutti più liberi, non serve la moralità. Grande sbaglio. È esattamente il contrario. Più la nostra pratica diventa profonda, elevata, più importante si diventa la moralità e più profonda si torna la moralità. Se noi vediamo in tutti gli insegnamenti del Tantra dicono che non si possono ottenere le realizzazioni se gli impegni non sono mantenuti puri. Cosa sono gli impegni? La moralità, sono i voti che prendiamo. I samaya. Samaya sono gli impegni. Se noi non sappiamo mantenere correttamente i nostri samaya, se noi non sappiamo mantenere correttamente i nostri impegni, non otterremo mai le realizzazioni. Perciò anche nel Tantra, anche nel sentiero Vajrayana, la moralità è estremamente importante, è essenziale. Mantenere i nostri impegni è sacro, è quello che ci dà la possibilità di ottenere poi dopo le varie realizzazioni. Ok? Quindi, con questo concludiamo questa terza domanda. Potremo entrare in 1000 dettagli, però il testo andrà più avanti a parlare di più della concentrazione, a parlare di più della saggezza ancora. Okay? So we could go on and on talking about these three higher trainings, but the text itself will go on talking more about concentration, talking more about wisdom. So for today we conclude here the third question. Okay? And we just need to remember to train ourselves in morality, concentration, and wisdom. And please, the main point of today is also reflect upon the all-pervasive suffering. That's very, very important. Okay? Jetsun lame kutse raptenchi tempe dreme sasomgi Drove munse tato ne gyurci Nechon semcho rinpoche Ma che panang che gyurci Che pa nyampar me payang Kongne konto pelwarash. May the precious mind of renunciation, which has not yet born, arise and grow, which has born have no decline and increase forevermore. Chancho semcho Rinpoche ma che panan che gyurci che pa nyampar me pa yang kong ne konto pelwar sho. May the precious body mind which has not yet born arise and grow, which has born have no decline and increase forevermore. Yanda tawa Rinpoche ma che panan che gyurci che pa nyampar me pa yang kong ne konto pelwar. May the precious correct view of reality, which has not yet born, arise and grow, which has born have no decline and increase forevermore. Nimo dele tsendele nime ku yandele kshin Nien takto delekpe concho som ki ngodrubtsol concho som trashisho. At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. Oma huntambala me sangye Rinpoche, kyobala me tamchor, trimbala me gendu Rinpoche, kyamne kuncho sumla chopa, Lojo sampo pagyo trashi pa, tuche tempe trinle yarngot, pegye drolo zambe zebrach, panden lame she la che pa bul, omo ahun, omo ahun.